Jake Morrison rubbed his tired eyes and stared at the glowing screens in front of him. The coffee in his cup had gone cold hours ago, but he didn't care. His job was to listen to the empty space between stars, waiting for signals that might never come. Most nights, all he heard was static and the background hum of distant suns. Tonight was different. The signal came in weak at first, like a whisper in a crowded room. Jake leaned forward and turned up the volume on his headset. The sound was strange, not like anything he had heard before. It wasn't the clean beep of human technology or the random noise of cosmic radiation. This was something else entirely. "Lisa, come look at this," Jake called to his partner across the room. Lisa Harper pushed back from her desk and walked over to Jake's station. She was good with languages, better than anyone else on the orbital station Haven's Gate. If anyone could make sense of strange signals, it would be her. "What do you have?" Lisa asked, putting on her own headset. "Started about 10 minutes ago. It's coming from the Kepler 442 system, but it's not following any pattern I know," Jake said, pointing at the waveforms dancing across his screen. Lisa listened carefully. The signal was broken up, cutting in and out like someone trying to speak through a bad phone connection. But underneath the static, she could hear something that made her heart race. Numbers. Mathematical sequences that were the same in any language. "Jake, this is a distress call," Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you sure? Look at these patterns. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. That's the universal distress signal we taught to all the first contact teams. Someone out there is asking for help." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Humanity had been alone in space for so long that finding other intelligent life had become more dream than reality. Now, someone was calling out to them across the dark. "We need to get Dr. Kane down here," Lisa said, already reaching for the emergency communication panel. Dr. Peter Kane arrived within minutes, still wearing his pajamas and looking confused. He was the station's expert on alien languages, though he had never actually heard one before. Most of his work involved theoretical studies and computer models. "What's the situation?" Dr. Kane asked, settling into a chair next to Jake's workstation. "Where?" "Receiving what appears to be a distress signal from Kepler 442. Multiple languages, but with universal mathematical distress codes embedded throughout," Lisa explained, handing him a pair of headphones. Dr. Kane listened in silence for several minutes, his expression growing more serious with each passing moment. He pulled up translation software on his tablet and began inputting the sound patterns. "This is incredible," he said finally. "I'm detecting at least 4 different linguistic structures. They're broadcasting in multiple languages, probably hoping someone will understand at least one of them." "Can you translate any of it?" Jake asked. "Give me time. The computer is running pattern analysis now, but some of these structures are completely alien to anything in our database." Captain Amy Rodriguez arrived an hour later, called from her sleep by the emergency alert. She was a practical woman who had commanded Haven's Gate for 5 years. In all that time, the most exciting thing they had encountered was a piece of space junk from an old satellite. "Report," she said simply, pouring herself coffee from the pot Lisa had made fresh. Jake brought her up to speed while Dr. Kane continued working on the translation. The signal was getting stronger, as if whoever was sending it was putting more power behind their transmission with each attempt. "Captain, I'm getting partial translations," Dr. Kane called out. "This is definitely a plea for help. I'm seeing words that translate to children dying and extinction." Captain Rodriguez set down her coffee cup. "Are you telling me we're listening to an entire species being wiped out?" "It appears that way, but there's something else. They keep using a term that roughly translates to Deathworlders of Soul. They seem to know about us." The room fell silent except for the crackling of the alien transmission. The idea that other species knew about humanity was shocking enough. The idea that they called humans Deathworlders was something else entirely. "Keep working on the translation," Captain Rodriguez ordered. "I need to contact Earth Command immediately." Over the next few hours, Dr. Kane pieced together more of the message. The aliens called themselves something that sounded like Zephyrians. They lived on peaceful worlds where they had developed art, science, and philosophy over thousands of years. But now they were under attack by something called the hegemony. The hegemony, according to the message, was an empire that moved from system to system, destroying any species they considered inferior. They enslaved some populations and killed others outright. The Zephyrians had been fighting them for months, but their peaceful nature had not prepared them for total war. "Captain, I've got the most important part translated," Dr. Kane said, his face pale. "Let's hear it." Dr. Kane cleared his throat and read from his tablet. "They call you monsters, but we know you are protectors. Our children are dying. We have heard the stories of the death world called Earth, where the strongest hunters in the galaxy learn to survive. If there is mercy in the universe, let it come from the death world. We are the last of our kind, and our final hope rests with the warriors who conquered their own world before reaching for the stars." Captain Rodriguez stared at the translation for a long moment. The implications were staggering. Not only did alien civilizations exist, but they had been watching humanity from afar. They saw humans not as explorers or diplomats, but as warriors from a world so dangerous that survival itself had made them into something feared across the galaxy. "How long until this signal reaches Earth?" she asked Jake. "Already sent it through. Quantum relay. Earth Command should have it within the hour." "And how long before the Zephyrians?" Captain Rodriguez paused, still getting used to the name of humanity's first alien contact. "How long before they're gone?" Dr. Kane consulted his analysis. "Based on the degradation in signal strength and the increasing desperation in their transmissions, I'd estimate we have maybe days, possibly hours before their civilization is completely destroyed." Captain Rodriguez walked to the observation window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an entire species was crying out for help from the legendary Deathworlders of Earth. They had heard stories of humanity's strength and had made Earth their last hope in a universe suddenly revealed to be far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The captain activated the station-wide communication system. "All personnel, this is Captain Rodriguez. Report to your stations immediately. We have just made first contact with an alien species, and they are asking for our help. This is not a drill." As the crew rushed to their posts, the alien transmission continued its desperate plea across the void, carrying with it the hopes of a dying civilization and the weight of humanity's first test as protectors of the galaxy. Admiral Helen Burke had been sleeping for only 2 hours when the priority alert woke her. The red lights flashing in her quarters told her this was not a normal emergency. In 30 years of military service, she had seen those lights only 3 times before. She dressed quickly and made her way to the command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The facility had been built during the early days of space exploration, designed to handle everything from asteroid impacts to alien invasions. Nobody had ever expected to actually use it for the latter. The command center buzzed with activity. Officers moved between computer stations while massive screens displayed star charts and signal analyses. At the center of it all stood General Marcus Taylor, a man who had spent his career preparing for wars that might never come. "Helen, thank God you're here," General Taylor said as she approached. "We've got a situation that's way above my pay grade." Admiral Burke took the tablet. He offered and began reading. The translation of the alien message was complete now, sent down from Haven's Gate along with detailed analysis. The more she read, the more her expression darkened. "How reliable is this intelligence?" she asked. "Dr. Kane is our best xenolinguist. Captain Rodriguez vouches for his work. The mathematical components of the message check out perfectly. This is real, Helen." Admiral Burke looked up at the main screen, which showed the location of the Kepler 442 system. It was 47 light-years from Earth, close enough for human ships to reach, but far enough away that any military action would be a major commitment. "What's the status of the Zephyrian transmission?" she asked. "Getting weaker by the hour. Our deep space monitors are picking up what appears to be weapons fire in their system. Massive energy signatures consistent with planetary bombardment." The Admiral felt a cold knot form in her stomach. They were listening to genocide in real time, and there was nothing they could do to stop it immediately. "I need to speak with the President," she said. Within an hour, the emergency session of the United Earth Defense Council was in progress. President Claire Bennett sat at the head of the table, flanked by her top military and civilian advisors. The room had been designed for exactly this type of crisis, though none of them had ever imagined it would involve aliens. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are facing a decision that will define humanity's place in the galaxy," President Bennett began. "Admiral Burke, please brief the Council on our situation." Admiral Burke stood and activated the holographic display. A three-dimensional map of local space appeared, showing Earth at the center, and the Kepler 442 system highlighted in red. 12 hours ago, we received a distress call from an alien species calling themselves Zephyrians. They are under attack by something called the Hegemony, which appears to be a military empire that destroys other civilizations for resources and territory. Secretary of Defense Linda Foster leaned forward. "What do we know about this hegemony?" "Limited information, but what we have is disturbing. According to the Zephyrian transmission, the hegemony has destroyed dozens of civilizations across multiple star systems. They appear to view all other species as inferior and unworthy of existence." General Taylor pulled up additional data on his tablet. "The concerning part is that they seem to know about us. The Zephyrians specifically mentioned Earth as the home of Deathworlders and called us the galaxy's strongest hunters." "Deathworlders?" asked President Bennett. Admiral Burke nodded grimly. "Apparently, other species have been monitoring us from a distance. They've classified Earth as what they call a death world because of its extreme conditions. They believe that surviving on our planet has made humans into something uniquely dangerous in galactic terms." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they were learning that not only were they not alone, but other species had been watching them and had decided they were too dangerous to approach directly. "What are our military options?" President Bennett asked. General Taylor stood and walked to the display. "We have the largest space fleet in human history, but it was designed for system defense and exploration. We've never planned for interstellar warfare. Numbers, General: 12 Dreadnought-class vessels, 47 destroyer escorts, and various support craft, all equipped with the latest quantum drive technology and advanced weaponry. The problem is logistics. Kepler 442 is 47 light-years away. Even with our fastest ships, it would take weeks to get there." Secretary Foster studied the tactical display. "What about the Zephyrians? How long do they have?" Admiral Burke's expression was grim. "Based on the degradation of their signal and the energy signatures we're detecting, possibly hours. Maybe a day or two at most." "So we can't save them?" President Bennett said quietly. "No, ma'am. But we might be able to stop the hegemony from doing this to other species." The President stood and walked to the window overlooking the command center below. Hundreds of people worked at their stations, monitoring everything from weather patterns to deep space communications. She had spent her entire political career focused on problems here on Earth. Now she was being asked to commit humanity to a war among the stars. Admiral, in your professional opinion, what happens if we do nothing? Admiral Burke didn't hesitate. The hegemony continues their expansion. Eventually, they reach Earth. We fight them here on our terms, but probably after they've had time to study us and prepare. And if we act now, we take the fight to them. We show the galaxy that Earth doesn't tolerate genocide. We also learn what we're really up against before they have time to organize against us specifically. General Taylor cleared his throat. Ma'am, I have to advise caution. We don't know anything about this hegemony's military capabilities. We could be sending our entire fleet into a trap. With respect, General, Secretary Foster interjected, we also don't know what message our inaction would send to other species. If the galaxy sees us as powerful warriors, our reputation might be our greatest weapon. President Bennett returned to her seat. Captain Rodriguez sent additional analysis from Haven's Gate. Dr. Kane believes the Zephyrians chose to contact U.S. specifically because other species are too peaceful to resist the hegemony effectively. They see humans as their only hope. Because we're from a death world, Admiral Burke added. Because we evolved as hunters and warriors. Because we survived ice ages and supervolcanoes and asteroid impacts that would have wiped out most other species. The president looked around the table at her advisors. Each of them represented different aspects of human civilization, but all of them understood the weight of this moment. The decision they made here would echo across the galaxy for generations. I keep thinking about something Dr. Kane translated. She said finally, the part where the Zephyrians said their children are dying. How do we look at ourselves in the mirror if we have the power to help and we choose not to use it? General Taylor tried one more time. Ma'am, the risk to humanity could be enormous. President Bennett stood again, her decision made. General, we didn't claw our way to the top of Earth's food chain to let bullies terrorize the innocent among the stars. Admiral Burke, how quickly can you assemble a task force? Admiral Burke smiled grimly. Give me 48 hours, and I'll have the largest fleet in human history ready to jump to hyperspace. Do it, an admiral? Make sure they understand that Earth is no longer staying neutral. The Deathworlders are going to war. As the meeting broke up, Admiral Burke began making calls to fleet commanders across the solar system. Within hours, ships would begin moving toward rally points. Crews would be briefed on humanity's first interstellar military operation. Above them all, the alien transmission continued its weakening cry for help, carrying across the void the last hopes of a dying civilization and the first call to action for humanity's role as protectors of the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Ryan Collins stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution and watched as ships appeared from all directions. The massive dreadnought was the largest warship humanity had ever built, but even it looked small compared to the fleet gathering. Around Earth. 12 hours had passed since President Bennett authorized Operation Prometheus. In that time, every major warship in the solar system had received orders to report to the rally point near Luna. Collins had commanded fleets before, but never anything like this. Admiral, the Roosevelt and the Churchill have just arrived from Mars Patrol, reported Commander Lisa Park from the communication station. That brings us to 8 dreadnoughts ready for jump. Collins nodded and studied the tactical display. Ships continued arriving every few minutes. Destroyers from the asteroid belt, supply vessels from the outer system, fighter squadrons from orbital defense platforms. It was the largest gathering of human military power in history. Sir, incoming message from the Eisenhower, another officer called out. Captain Stone reports his ship is fully loaded and ready for combat operations. Very good. Signal all vessels to maintain formation and stand by for final briefing. Collins walked to his ready room where the senior officers were, gathering via holographic link. These were the people who would lead humanity's first interstellar war. Each of them had trained for this moment without ever believing it would actually come. Colonel Susan Hayes appeared first on the hologram. She commanded the Marine contingent aboard the Retribution, 5,000 of the toughest soldiers humanity could produce. Her husband, Commander Nathan Hayes, materialized next to her, representing the fighter pilot squadrons that would provide close support during the operation. "Susan, what's the status of the ground forces?" Collins asked. "All Marine. Units are loaded and ready. We've got full combat gear, heavy weapons, and enough supplies for extended operations. My people are eager to show these hegemony forces what Earth Marines can do." Commander Hayes leaned forward. "The fighter squadrons are prepped as well. We've loaded special ammunition designed for space combat. If the enemy wants a fight, we'll give them one they won't forget." Chief Engineer Tony Martinez joined the conference next. He was responsible for keeping the entire fleet operational during what could be a very long campaign. His weathered face showed the stress of the past day's preparations. "Admiral, all ships report quantum drives are functioning at peak efficiency. We've loaded enough spare parts and raw materials to handle major repairs in the field. The engineering teams know what they're doing." Dr. Elena Vasquez was the last to join the meeting. As the fleet's xenobiologist, she would be responsible for understanding any alien technology they encountered. Her job was especially important since they knew almost nothing about their enemies. "Doctor, what can you tell us about what we might face out there?" Collins asked. Dr. Vasquez pulled up data files on her tablet. "Based on the Zephyrian transmissions, the hegemony appears to be a coalition of species that have been conquering other civilizations for centuries. They seem to prefer overwhelming force and psychological warfare. Any weaknesses we can exploit?" "That's the interesting part, Admiral. According to the translations Dr. Kane provided, most galactic civilizations evolved on what they call garden worlds, planets with stable climates, abundant resources, and very few natural disasters. They've never had to deal with the kind of environmental pressures that shaped human evolution." Collins raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" "Meaning they're probably not as tough as we are. They've never had to survive ice ages or massive volcanic eruptions. They've never had to hunt predators or fight for resources the way humans did for millions of years. We might have advantages they can't even imagine." The Admiral nodded thoughtfully. Humanity's reputation as Deathworlders was starting to make more sense. While other species developed on peaceful worlds, humans had been forged by a planet that seemed determined to kill them at every opportunity. "All right, people, let's talk strategy," Collins said, activating the main tactical display. The hologram showed the route to Kepler 442 and what little they knew about the system. "We'll jump in at the edge of the system and assess the situation. If the Zephyrians are still alive, we help them. If not, we make sure the hegemony pays for what they've done. Either way, we send a message to the galaxy that Earth protects the innocent." Colonel Hayes studied the star charts. "What about rules of engagement, sir? The hegemony has been committing genocide. As far as I'm concerned, they've forfeited any right to mercy. We offer them one chance to surrender. If they refuse, we show them why other species call us Deathworlders." Commander Hayes smiled grimly. "Understood, sir. My pilots are ready to demonstrate human superiority in combat." Chief Martinez looked concerned. "Admiral, we're going in blind. We don't know how many ships they have or what kind of weapons they're using. Are we sure we can handle whatever we find?" Collins walked to the viewport and looked out at the assembled fleet. Hundreds of ships floated in perfect formation, their weapons powered and their crews ready for battle. Each vessel represented the best of human engineering and military doctrine. "Tony, humans have been the galaxy's apex predators for millions of years. We just didn't know it yet. These hegemony forces have been picking on peaceful civilizations that never learned how to fight. Now they're about to meet a species that's been fighting since before we could walk upright. Dr. Vasquez pulled up additional data. The Admiral's right. Look at these biological scans from the Zephyrian transmissions. Their bone density is about half of ours. Their muscle mass is significantly lower. They evolved on a world with lighter gravity and no large predators. What about the hegemony species? Colonel Hayes asked. Similar patterns. Every species we've identified appears to come from stable, peaceful environments. They understand conquest, but they don't understand the kind of total warfare that shaped human civilization. Collins returned to the tactical display. We have one more advantage they don't know about. Human ships are built like humans. Redundant. Systems, heavy armor, and the ability to keep fighting, even when badly damaged. Our entire military doctrine is based on surviving impossible odds. A new voice joined the conference as Captain Alex Turner connected from the destroyer UE's Vengeance. Admiral, my ship is reporting ready for immediate departure. The crew is anxious to show these aliens what happens when they threaten innocent people. Good to hear, Alex. How are the other destroyer captains feeling? Eager for battle, sir. We've been training our whole careers for ship-to-ship combat. The enemy is about to learn why Earth conquered its own solar system before reaching for the stars. Collins looked around at his officers, both present and connected via hologram. These were the people who would carry humanity's message to the galaxy. They were products of a world that had tried to kill them since birth, and it had made them into something unique among the stars. Final systems check in 30 minutes, he announced. Then we jump to hyperspace and show the galaxy what Deathworlders can do when we're protecting our friends. As the conference ended, Collins remained on the bridge watching his fleet. Soon, these ships would carry humanity's first message to hostile aliens. The message was simple. Earth protects the innocent, and anyone who threatens peaceful civilizations would face the consequences of awakening the galaxy's apex predators. The quantum drives began powering up across the fleet, preparing to carry humanity's hunters to their first interstellar war. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, like ghosts materializing from the void. Admiral Collins stood on the bridge of the Retribution and stared at the tactical display in horror. What they found was worse than anyone had imagined. The Zephyrian homeworld hung in space like a broken jewel. Once it had been covered in beautiful crystal cities that caught and reflected the light of their sun. Now, massive craters scarred the surface where plasma bombardment had turned entire continents into molten glass. The atmosphere glowed with the heat of dying fires. Scanning for life signs, reported Lieutenant Commander Kate Sullivan from the science station. She was the fleet's xenobiologist specialist, trained for first contact situations that everyone hoped would be peaceful. Instead, she was documenting genocide. I'm getting readings from underground shelters, she said, her voice tight with emotion. There are survivors, but not many. Maybe a few thousand out of what appears to have been a population in the millions. Collins felt anger building in his chest. The peaceful civilization that had sent out their desperate plea for help had been almost completely destroyed while humanity traveled through hyperspace to reach them. But some had survived, and that meant there was still hope. What about the hegemony forces? He asked. Captain Stone's voice came over the communication system from the Eisenhower. Admiral, we're detecting a large enemy fleet in orbit around the fourth planet. Looks like they're setting up some kind of mining operation. Collins studied the sensor data. The hegemony fleet was massive, easily twice the size of the human force. Dozens of warships surrounded smaller vessels that were already beginning to strip resources from the Zephyrian system. They weren't just conquerors. They were scavengers, picking the bones of the civilization they had destroyed. Sir, incoming transmission from the enemy fleet, reported the communications officer. Put it through. The main screen flickered and showed the face of something that had never evolved on Earth. The creature had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond, pattern and skin that looked like rough leather. When it spoke, the universal translator rendered its words in flat, emotionless English. Unknown vessels, you have entered hegemony territory. Identify yourselves and state your business or be destroyed. Collins stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. I am Fleet Admiral Ryan Collins of the United Earth Defense Forces. You are guilty of genocide against the Zephyrian people. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to the laws of war. The alien's 4 eyes focused on Collins with what might have been surprise. Earth? The mythical Deathworld? We were told your species was merely a legend used to frighten children. We're very real. And we're here to stop you from murdering innocent people. The creature made a sound that the translator couldn't interpret, but Collins got the impression it was laughing. I am Fleet Commander Ziktai of the Hegemony, 3rd Fleet. We have been conquering worlds since before your primitive species discovered fire. Withdraw now, or share the fate of the Zephyrians. Collins smiled coldly. Fleet Commander, you've made a mistake. You've been attacking peaceful species that never learned how to fight back. We're different. We're from a world that spent millions of years trying to kill us, and it just made us stronger. Zaitai-'s expression changed as he studied the human fleet more carefully. Your ships appear functional, but you are outnumbered 2 to 1. Mathematics does not lie, Deathworlder. Mathematics assumes all variables are equal. They're not. Collins gestured to the tactical display behind him. Your ships are designed for attacking defenseless targets. Ours are designed for war. Your crews evolved on garden worlds where the biggest threat was bad weather. My people are descended from persistence hunters who survived ice ages and supervolcanic eruptions. The alien leaned forward, and Collins could see uncertainty creeping into its 4 eyes. You speak boldly for someone facing inevitable destruction. I speak truthfully. You have 1 chance to surrender and face trial for your crimes. Refuse and discover why peaceful species across the galaxy fear the Deathworlders of Earth. Zaitai was quiet for a long moment, studying the human ships on his own displays. Collins could almost see the alien's confidence beginning to crack, as he realized that these weren't the helpless victims he was used to facing. Your reputation may be exaggerated, human. We shall test it. The transmission cut off. Collins turned to his communications officer. Signal the fleet. All ships prepare for combat operations. While the human fleet prepared for battle, Lieutenant. Commander Sullivan was working on a different problem. The Zephyrian survivors were still hiding in their underground shelters, terrified and convinced that they were about to die. She needed to establish contact and let them know the help had finally arrived. I'm getting a response to our hails, Sullivan reported. It's weak, but someone down there is trying to communicate. The bridge speakers crackled with static, then cleared to reveal a voice speaking in the same musical language they had heard in the original distress call. Dr. Kane's translation software, updated with new linguistic data, provided a real-time translation. Unknown vessels. This is Lyandra of the Zephyrian Council. We detected your arrival, but do not recognize your ship configurations. Are you more hegemony forces coming to finish what your allies started? Sullivan activated the response system. Lyandra, this is Lieutenant Commander Kate Sullivan of the human starship Retribution. We received your distress call. We're here to help. The silence that followed lasted so long that Sullivan worried the connection had been lost. When Lyandra spoke again, her voice was filled with disbelief. Humans? The Deathworlders of legend? You actually exist? We exist, and we're here to stop the hegemony. Can you tell us how many of your people are still alive? perhaps 3,000 in the shelter complex. There may be others elsewhere, but we have lost contact with most of our cities. The orbital bombardment has been ... thorough. Sullivan felt tears in her eyes as she imagined the terror these peaceful beings had endured. Lyandra, we're going to engage the hegemony fleet. Stay in your shelters until we signal that it's safe. You would? Fight for us? But why? We are not of your species. We have nothing to offer you in return. Sullivan looked at Admiral Collins, who nodded for her to continue. Because it's the right thing to do. Because no one should have to watch their children die while calling out for help that never comes. Lyandra was quiet again, then spoke, in a voice thick with emotion. The legends said that Deathworlders were monsters who conquered through violence and fear. But you ... you are not monsters at all. No, Sullivan said gently. We're protectors, and we're very good at it. Admiral Collins stepped back to the center of the bridge as reports came in from across the fleet. Every ship was ready for battle. Every crew member understood what they were fighting for. The hegemony had made the mistake of attacking innocents, while the galaxy's apex predators were finally ready to leave their home system. Fleet Commander Zettai wanted to test Earth's reputation. Collins said to his bridge crew, "Let's show him what Deathworlders can do when we're protecting our friends." The human fleet began moving toward the hegemony forces, carrying with them the hopes of a dying civilization and the promise that Earth would never allow genocide to go unanswered. The first battle between humanity and a hostile alien empire was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first shots of humanity's first interstellar war came from the hegemony fleet. Bright beams of energy lanced across space toward the human ships, weapons designed to break the will of peaceful civilizations with overwhelming displays of power. Admiral Collins watched the enemy fire approach on his tactical display and felt something that Fleet Commander Zettai could never understand. These weren't the plasma bursts that had terrified the Zephyrians. To human eyes, they looked almost slow and predictable. Evasive maneuvers, Collins ordered calmly. All ships, implement Doctrine 7. The human fleet scattered like a school of fish avoiding a predator, each ship following patterns that had been developed from millions of years of survival instincts. The hegemony weapons, designed to hit large, slow targets, missed most of their intended marks. Return fire, Collins commanded. Show them what Deathworld weapons can do. The UES Retribution's main guns opened up with a sound that shook the entire ship. The kinetic projectiles they fired were simple compared to hegemony energy weapons, but they had been designed by a species that understood the value of raw destructive power. When they hit, hegemony shields collapsed like paper. Captain Alex Turner's voice came over the communication system from the destroyer UE's Vengeance. "Admiral, we're breaking through their defensive line. These aliens fight like they've never faced real opposition before." Turner was right. The hegemony fleet formation was designed to intimidate rather than protect. Their ships spread out in a display of power that left them vulnerable to concentrated attack. They had never faced an enemy that would actually fight back with tactical intelligence. "All destroyers, target their command ships," Collins ordered. "Let's cut the head off this snake." The human destroyers moved like predators, circling wounded prey. They used the asteroid field at the edge of the system for cover, appearing and disappearing in ways that confused the hegemony sensors. Aliens had technology, but they had never developed the three-dimensional thinking that came naturally to a species that evolved from tree-dwelling ancestors. Commander Nathan Hayes led his fighter squadrons in their first combat against alien forces. His pilots had trained for this moment their entire careers, but nothing had prepared them for how different it would be from fighting other humans. "Gold Leader, this is Gold 3. came the voice of Lieutenant Maria Santos over the radio. These alien fighters move like they're drunk. They can't handle high-G maneuvers at all. Hayes smiled grimly as he rolled his fighter through a series of turns that would have crushed most alien pilots. Humans had evolved under higher gravity than most galactic species. What felt normal to them was impossible for creatures from lighter, more peaceful worlds. Copy that, Gold 3. Take advantage of it. Show them why we're called Deathworlders. The human fighters tore through the hegemony formations like wolves among sheep. The alien pilots evolved from herbivorous species that had never needed to hunt or gouge predators, couldn't match the reflexes of persistence hunters from Earth, not down on the Zephyrian homeworld. Lyandra watched the battle through the few remaining orbital sensors that still functioned. What she saw changed everything she thought she knew about warfare. Impossible, she whispered to her aide Veltar. The humans are outnumbered, but they're winning. How can this be? Veltar asked. The hegemony has conquered dozens of worlds. Because those worlds never learned how to fight, Lyandra said, understanding dawning in her voice. Look at how the human ships move. They're not just using technology. They're using instincts, hunting instincts. On the Retribution's bridge, Chief Engineer Tony Martinez was discovering something that would change human understanding of Galactic. Warfare forever. The hegemony ships, for all their advanced technology, had a critical weakness. Admiral, their armor is designed to stop energy weapons, not kinetic projectiles, Martinez reported. Our simple bullets are tearing through their hulls like they're made of tin foil. Collins nodded grimly. They've been fighting civilizations that use clean, efficient energy weapons. They've never faced a species primitive enough to still throw rocks at their enemies. The irony wasn't lost on him. Humanity's so-called primitive weapons were proving devastatingly effective against aliens, who had focused on advanced technology while neglecting the brutal practicality that had served humans. For millions of years, Colonel Susan Hayes was about to prove another point about human warfare. When the hegemony flagship tried to retreat behind a damaged cruiser, she made a decision that shocked both sides of the battle. All hands, prepare for ramming speed, she announced over the ship's communication system. We're going to board that cruiser the hard way. The U.S. Washington, a heavy cruiser under Hayes' command, accelerated directly toward the enemy ship. The hegemony crew, trained in civilized warfare where ships maintained safe distances, couldn't believe what they were seeing. They're going to ram us, came panicked transmissions from the alien vessel. This is insane. No civilized species engages in suicide attacks, but it wasn't suicide. The Washington's armor had been designed by engineers who understood that sometimes you had to get close to your enemy to win. The ship struck the hegemony cruiser in a controlled collision that opened both hulls, but left the human vessel intact enough for boarding operations. Colonel Hayes led her Marines through the breach like ancient warriors storming a castle. The hegemony crew, evolved from peaceful herbivores, had never faced the close-quarters combat that human soldiers had been perfecting since they lived in caves. Surrender now, and you will be treated with mercy, Hayes announced through her suit's speakers as her Marines secured the alien bridge. The hegemony captain, a creature that looked like a cross between a lizard and a deer, stared at her in terror. You are monsters. No civilized species fights like this. We're not monsters, Hayes said, removing her helmet so the alien could see her face. We're just very good at what we do. And what we do is protect innocent people from bullies like you. Fleet Commander Zek Tai watched in growing horror as his supposedly superior fleet was systematically destroyed by the primitive Deathworlders. Ship after ship fell to weapons that should have been obsolete, tactics that should have been impossible, and soldiers who fought with a ferocity that no peaceful species could match. How? He demanded of his tactical officer. How are they doing this? Sir, their entire military doctrine appears to be based on survival under impossible conditions. They fight like every battle might be their last. Because on their world. It might have been, Zektai said, finally understanding what he was facing. We're not fighting a military force. We're fighting the survivors of a planet that spent millions of years trying to kill them. As the battle turned decisively in humanity's favor, Admiral Collins opened a channel to the remaining hegemony ships. Fleet Commander Zektai, this is your final warning. Surrender now, or we'll show you what happens when Deathworlders stop. Holding back. Zektai looked at the tactical display showing his fleet's destruction and felt something his species had, rarely experienced in their long history of conquest. Fear. Real, primal fear of a predator species that had finally left. Its hunting grounds. Double quotes, he began, then stopped. His pride warred with his survival instincts that had been dulled by millions of years of easy victories against peaceful civilizations. The decision was made for him when the human fighters completed. Their devastating attack ran on his flagship's engines. Dead in space and surrounded by the galaxy's apex predators, Fleet Commander Zektai faced the inevitable end of hegemony. Expansion into human space. Earth had announced its presence to the galaxy, and the message was clear. The Deathworlders were done hiding. 3 days after the Battle of Kepler 442, Fleet Commander Zektai sat in the brig of the U.E.'s Retribution and stared at the walls of his cell. The hegemony's third fleet no longer existed. Half the ships had been destroyed, and the rest had surrendered. When they realized they were fighting something beyond their understanding, Admiral Collins walked into the holding area and studied the alien prisoner. Zektai looked smaller now, his 4 eyes dim with defeat. The arrogance that had carried him through dozens of conquered worlds was gone, replaced by something Collins recognized as genuine fear. Fleet Commander, Collins said, settling into a chair across from the energy barrier that contained the alien. I have some questions for you. Zektai looked up slowly. I will tell you nothing, Deathworlder. Kill me if you wish, but I will not betray my people. I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to ask you about the other threats out there. Your hegemony wasn't the only aggressive empire in the galaxy, was it? The alien's expression changed to one of surprise. You would spare my life after what we did to the Zephyrians? You'll face trial for your crimes, but we're not executioners. We're protectors. There's a difference. Zektai was quiet for a long moment, studying the human who had destroyed his fleet. Finally, he spoke. The hegemony is one of 7 major aggressive powers in this region of the galaxy. We competed with each other for territory and resources. Collins leaned forward. Tell me about the others. The Void Hunters operate from the galactic core. They consume entire star systems for energy. The slave empire builds its economy on captured populations. The machine collective converts biological species into cybernetic servants. Zektai paused, his fear growing. Each of them controls hundreds of systems. Each commands fleets that make my third fleet look like a scouting party. And they all avoided Earth because they thought we were just a legend? Yes, the peaceful species spread stories about the Deathworlders of Sol, but most of us believed they were myths created to give hope to the helpless. Zegtai's 4 eyes focused on Collins with something like respect. We were wrong. You are. Everything the legends claimed and more. Collins stood to leave, then turned back. Fleet Commander, those other empires you mentioned? They're about to learn what happens when the galaxy's apex predators decide to get involved in interstellar politics. Down on the Zephyrian homeworld, Lieutenant Commander Kate Sullivan worked with the survivors to assess the damage and begin reconstruction efforts. The beautiful crystal cities would take decades to rebuild, but the Zephyrians were alive, and that was what mattered. Lyandra walked with Sullivan through the ruins of what had been the planetary capital. The Zephyrian leader moved slowly, still adjusting to the idea that her people had survived the impossible. "Commander Sullivan, how do we thank you for what your species has done?" Lyandra asked. "The hegemony would have killed us all within days." "You don't need to thank us," Sullivan replied. "You just need to help us understand what else is out there. We're new to galactic politics, and we need to know what threats exist." Lyandra gestured to a partially intact building that had once housed their planetary archive. "Our records contain information about dozens of peaceful civilizations that have been destroyed or enslaved over the past century. The galaxy is much more dangerous than your species realizes. Then we need to do something about it." 3 weeks later, Admiral Helen Burke arrived at Kepler 442 with reinforcements and supplies. The second wave of human ships included hospital vessels, construction equipment, and enough materials to help the Zephyrians begin rebuilding their world. Admiral Collins met her aboard the newly arrived flagship U.E.'s Constitution, a massive vessel that dwarfed even the Retribution. The Constitution had been designed as a mobile command center for extended operations far from Earth. "Helen, what's the situation back home?" Collins asked as they reviewed reports in the ship's briefing room. "The entire galaxy is talking about what happened here," Urk replied. "We're receiving communications from dozens of species. Some are asking for help. Others are offering alliance. A few are making threats." Collins studied the star charts. That covered one wall of the briefing room. Red markers indicated hostile empires. Blue markers showed peaceful civilizations that had requested Earth's protection. The red markers significantly outnumbered the blue ones. "What's President Bennett's position on all this?" Admiral Burke activated a holographic message from Earth. President Bennett appeared in the center of the room, her expression serious but determined. "Admiral Collins, your victory at Kepler 442 has changed everything. The galaxy now knows that Earth exists and that we're not going to tolerate genocide. I'm authorizing the establishment of the Galactic Defense Alliance with Earth as the primary military power," the hologram continued. "We're building the largest fleet in human history. Every peaceful species that requests our protection will receive it. Every aggressive empire that threatens innocent people will face the consequences. The age of hiding behind our solar system is over." Collins nodded as the message ended. "What about resources? This is going to require a massive commitment." "The Zephyrians have already offered to share their biotechnology with us," Burke replied. "Other rescued species are contributing their own specialties. We're not just building a military alliance. We're creating a new kind of galactic civilization based on cooperation rather than conquest." Dr. Elena Vasquez joined them in the briefing room, carrying data tablets filled with analysis of captured hegemony technology. "Admirals, I've been studying their equipment. It's advanced, but it's designed for fighting peaceful civilizations. Their shields can't handle kinetic weapons. Their armor can't resist ramming attacks. Their tactics assume their enemies will surrender rather than fight to the death. Meaning? Meaning every aggressive empire in the galaxy has the same weaknesses. They've been winning through intimidation and overwhelming force against species that never learned how to fight back. They've never faced persistence hunters from a death world." Admiral Burke walked to the viewport and looked out at the growing fleet. Human ships worked alongside vessels from a dozen different species, all united under Earth's protection. It was a sight that would have been impossible just a month earlier. "Collins, do you realize what we've started?" she asked. "A war? No, a revolution. For the first time in galactic history, peaceful civilizations have someone willing and able to protect them. The bullies and conquerors are about to discover that their victims have found champions." Collins joined her at the viewport. In the distance, Zephyrian ships worked alongside human vessels, their crews learning from each other and building something new. The partnership between Deathworlders and peaceful species was creating possibilities that neither could achieve alone. "Signal from Earth Command," reported the communications officer. "Priority message for Admiral Collins." The message was brief but significant. Deep space monitors had detected massive fleet movements from the Galactic core. The Void Hunters, apparently responding to news of the hegemony's defeat, were assembling what appeared to be an invasion force aimed at human space. "Admiral," the message concluded, "Operation Prometheus Phase 2 is authorized. Show them what Deathworlders can do when we're truly angry." Collins looked at the tactical display showing the approaching threat. The Void Hunters commanded thousands of ships and had been conquering civilizations for millennia. They saw Earth's intervention as a challenge to their dominance. "Helen, signal the fleet. All ships prepare for extended operations. It looks like we're about to teach the galaxy's oldest predators that Earth has new apex hunters now." As alarms sounded throughout the human fleet, Collins felt the satisfaction that came from knowing humanity had found its true purpose among the stars. They weren't explorers or diplomats or traders. They were protectors, and they were very good at their job. The galaxy would never be the same.